Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick2, and today I'm going to be showing you what the best weapon talents are in the game for each weapon, and go into detail explaining how each talent works. If this video helps you out, please make sure to drop a like and subscribe, as that helps me out a ton, and let me know in the comments if this video is helpful for you, and if there's any other certain type of video that you'd like to see from me in the future. But anyways, let's get right into it. This video is probably going to be a long one, so I'm going to do my best to only include the pertinent information, and try to keep it as concise as possible, but anyways, let's start. So first off, I often get asked what types of weapons talents can go on certain weapons. If this talent can be on an AR, if this talent can be on a sniper, etc., because that isn't really clearly explained within the game. So I figured that I might as well show you guys a list of which talents can be on which gun type first. It would probably take a while to verbally say all of the talents that can be on each gun, unless you have like a godlike memory. I doubt that you'd retain all of that information anyways, so instead I just decided to put up an image of a spreadsheet that showcases all of the talents and which gun type that they are applicable to. This way you can always just come back to the video if need be to take a look at what talents you may want to go for. Big shout out to Admiral Regis for making the spreadsheet, and I'll of course leave a link to it in the description if you'd rather just refer to that. It also has all other sorts of information as well, so I definitely think it's worth looking at. Now with that out of the way, I figured the best way to move forward and make this video as concise as possible was to list each talent, give them a ranking based on how good I think they are, explain how they work, and which guns I think you'll get the most use out of them from, and whatever else I think is worth mentioning. I'll start off with the A tier talents, which are going to be the best ones, the B tier talents, which are okay but not great, and then C tier talents, which are bottom of the barrel, typically not going to benefit you all that much. As a quick TLDR, here's a graphic on screen that is going to show you what I think the best weapon talents are for each weapon. This is probably only going to be from a damage standpoint, and I still would recommend watching the video, as it's better to get a full understanding of how everything works. And what talent is good for me might not be as good for you because it depends on your build, etc. But this is just for the people that don't really care about all of that. I should also mention that I'm mainly going to be talking about the talents that are in the first slot, as those are going to be the ones affecting your gun mainly, and then at the very end of the video, I'll be talking about the secondary talents and the holster talents. I'm adding this in while editing. Unfortunately, I don't have pictures of every single talent, so some of the talents I'm going to have to take a picture from the spreadsheet. Sorry about that. So to start things off, we have Breadbasket, which is actually one of my personal favorites that requires 5 or more red attributes to activate, and this talent is going to give you an extra 5% headshot damage every time you hit a body shot, stacking up to a total of 10 times. And this extra headshot damage buff is going to go away every time you hit a headshot. This talent is viable for pretty much all weapon types, probably except snipers, because you're not going to want to hit body shots with a sniper. The reason this talent is so good, because even if you're going for only headshots, you're going to inevitably hit body shots, which is going to add damage towards your next headshot anyways, so you're pretty much always going to get extra damage. It's hard to quantify exactly how much damage you're going to get from this, as it varies from gun type, how good your aim is, how many shots you're hitting in the body in that instant, etc. But I like to say that at a minimum you get around 5 to 10% free headshot damage from this, just passively, not even attempting to benefit from it, and that definitely makes it one of my favorite talents. Another great talent is Strained, which I'm sure that all of you guys have heard of by now, which requires 5 or less offensive stats and gives you extra crit damage based on how low of armor you have. This talent works very well when running a build with high crit chance and high amounts of health, and synergizes fantastically with the talent Berserk. But if I were to use Strained, I might as well just recreate the rest of the setup, considering you have to invest a lot into using that talent properly, so just keep that in mind. Another talent that's very good, but unfortunately requires 5 or less offensive stats as well, is Optimist, which gives you extra weapon damage based on how much ammo is missing from the magazine. This talent is very strong for pretty much every weapon type, and is very good if you're running either a tanky or skill power focused build with very low crit chance, as it requires you to have 5 or less red attributes. And the reason that I say low crit chance is because if you're not trying to go for one of those types of builds, Strained would probably be better in many situations. Next talent is Ranger, which requires 4 or less utility slots, and this talent is very strong as it adds 2% weapon damage for every 5 meters you are away from a target. And targets are often much further than they appear, so you actually gain a lot from this talent. Personally though, I think this talent is particularly strong on both snipers and rifles, as they are still effective at very long ranges, whilst other gun types aren't as good at a range, such as ARs, SMGs, and obviously shotguns. So personally, I would only use this talent on a rifle or on a sniper, as they can fully benefit from it, and other gun types would benefit more from other talents, and you also wouldn't want to purposely put yourself at a long distance using an AR or something. Next, we have a talent that is only going to be applicable to LMGs called Frenzy, which gives you additional weapon damage and rate of fire after reloading the gun from empty. This talent is incredibly strong and can net you absolutely insane amounts of damage during the time that it's up, which is why I think that it's an A tier talent. But unfortunately though, to gain full effectiveness of this, you have to play extremely risky, which can often get you killed because the buff is only going to last for 7 seconds, so you want to try to kill people during that period. Another downside of this is that you wouldn't want to use this talent with one of the larger round LMGs, such as an M60 or something, because you have to reload the gun from empty to get the talent, and it's not easy to just spray 100 rounds into thin air. And also, since you're reloading so much, you don't want a gun that has like a 5-second reload time. So if you want to use this talent, you'll definitely want to use it on either an L86 or an RPK, as they both have smaller magazine sizes and faster reload time, so you can get the benefit of this talent much more frequently. But unfortunately, as you probably know from my weapon guide video, these guns have significantly less damage potential than the M60 or the M249/MK46, but nonetheless, this talent is still pretty strong. Just probably not as strong as the talent Unhinged, which also only works for LMGs and gives you a whopping 25% weapon damage at the cost of 35% weapon handling. Unhinged is probably going to give you more consistent damage than Frenzy in the long run and is much easier to optimally use. A flat 25% weapon damage is absolutely insane, and of course works on the two best LMGs being the M60 and the MK46. But if you don't mod your weapon properly, using this can actually result in a loss of damage, as it can heavily affect the accuracy of your gun, making it much harder to land shots, thus making you do less damage in the long run. So if you use this talent, I'd highly recommend trying to get accuracy weapon mods, maybe getting the accurate talent on the gun, or even running brand sets that give you accuracy as well. It might seem dumb to lose other damage just to get accuracy for this, but if you set it up properly and test it a little bit, it's definitely worth the 25% damage that you gain from this talent to stack a little bit of accuracy. Next is Premeditated, which only works on shotguns. I don't want to spend too much time on it. It pretty much just gives you free weapon damage if used properly, which can be pretty nice. I personally don't use shotguns, so I just don't really want to spend a lot of time on it. Another quick mention is First Blood, which only works on snipers, which makes your first shot a guaranteed headshot no matter where you hit the person when using an 8 times or larger scope. This talent is mainly only good in PvP, as you can pretty much always one-shot somebody even by shooting their toes. I guess it's decent in PvE, but I'd honestly rather not run a scope in PvE and just say, like, get better aim or something. You can hit headshots pretty easily in PvE, and you don't get that much value from it in PvE as well, as it only is going to affect your first shot, whereas in PvP, it makes much more sense to use. Moving on to B tier talents, we're going to start off with Boomerang, which only works with rifles and makes your critical hits have a 50% chance to return the bullet to the magazine, and if this happens, your next shot gets 20% weapon damage. This talent may seem pretty good on paper. In reality though, I think it's okay, but unfortunately, to gain full effectiveness, you want to have about 50% crit chance or higher, and even with that much crit chance, only about 1/4 of your bullets are actually going to get the 20% weapon damage bonus, which certainly isn't bad, right? But if you actually miss your shot that has the extra weapon damage, you just lose that damage entirely, whereas with Breadbasket, the stack isn't consumed until you get a headshot. So personally, I just think that this talent isn't as reliable, especially considering how fast you usually shoot rifles. Another talent kind of similar to this is Rifleman, which again only works on rifles and requires 4 or less defensive to activate, which is going to give you extra weapon damage after landing headshots. On paper, this talent could be really good, but just like the previous talent, if you miss your shot when you gain the buff, the weapon damage goes away entirely. And I'm sure, as we all know, when using a rifle, you typically shoot pretty fast, which is going to inevitably lead to you missing shots here and there. So again, I think Breadbasket and Ranger would be a much better choice for rifles. So here's a talent that I think a lot of people might be mad that I don't consider A tier, and that talent is going to be Killer. It requires 5 or more offensive to trigger, which is pretty easy to get, and it's going to give you an additional 50% crit chance for 5 seconds after killing a target with a critical hit. The reason that I don't think this talent is very good is because this talent doesn't increase your crit chance past the cap, which is 60%, so in theory, to gain full effectiveness from this talent, you would want to have low crit chance so that you're getting the most out of the buff. But if you run low crit chance, you won't get the buff to activate that often. The opposite is true as well, of course. If you run a high amount of crit chance to get the buff to activate a lot, you don't get that much out of the buff because it caps at 60% crit chance anyways, and you'd be going well over cap if you ran a lot of crit chance. In addition to that, it only lasts for 5 seconds, so not only do you not get all that much extra damage out of it, it doesn't last all that long anyways, and it's hard to consistently get to proc anyway, so I think it's just too inconsistent to use over other talents, but it's okay, I guess, if you don't have anything better to use. Next talent is Close and Personal, which requires 5 or more offensive rolls and is going to give you 50% weapon damage for 5 seconds after killing a target within 7 meters. Again, this may seem great on paper, but 7 meters is actually extremely close to you, meaning that you have to play very risky in order to get full benefit of this talent, and the buff will only last for 5 seconds, which isn't a very long time. This talent can be pretty good if used correctly, but it's very inconsistent and I'd rather just run other things, although definitely worth using if you have the right build to complement it. Next we have Fast Hands that has no requirements and it gives you 3% reload speed every time you hit a crit with a max of 20, which would be 60% faster reload speed in most scenarios. Most guns in this game though don't have extremely long reload speeds, usually it's about 2 seconds or so. And if you're on the Sharpshooter Specialist, you get a 30% reload speed reduction, which already makes most guns reload very quickly. So you don't get that much value out of this talent. I think this talent would only be decent on a gun like an M60 or an MK46, but I'd much rather have Unhinged or Breadbasket or Frenzy on those talents anyways, as losing the damage from those talents isn't worth the reload speed. Next talent is Perpetuation, which requires 4 or less offensive, and it gives you 5% skill duration, ammo, and charges to the next skill used, max stack at 10. This talent could be good if you're running a skill build with a specific skill. Truth be told, I haven't really used much of the skills, so I don't really know what this would be perfect for. I'm sure it could be good with a few of them though, maybe like a damage chem launcher or something like that, but it would only be good solo because you need to be the person getting the kills, and of course you need to make sure that you land headshots. I'm sure that you could make a pretty interesting build with this talent, but of course if you're looking for pure damage, this talent isn't going to help you out with that. Next talent is Vindictive, which requires 4 or less offensive and is probably only half decent if you're running like a support build, which I'm not entirely sure is even viable at this moment, but anyways, the talent gives your whole group within 15 meters 20% crit chance when you kill an enemy with a status effect. The crit chance buff isn't too high, and 15 meters is also a very short range, and it's also very hard to reliably kill people with status effects, so this talent might even be C tier because of all of these reasons. It just might be good when the raid comes out or something, so I figured I'd give it the benefit of the doubt. Next talent is Preservation, which requires 5 or more defensive, which repairs 5% armor over 3 seconds after killing an enemy, and headshots give a higher percentage. This talent is good if you're trying to run a sustained build in a solo context, maybe pair it with like Safeguard and Clutch, and you could maybe be like half invincible or something, but you of course are going to be sacrificing damage, and you also have to stack 5 defensive rolls or more to activate it, so in most scenarios it's probably not worth getting. So that's pretty much going to be it for the B tier talents. Now, when talking about the C tier talents, I'm not going to waste time explaining them, etc. I'm just going to give a very quick TLDR or explanation of why I think they're shitty, as you can read the tooltip on screen anyways. First off, being measured, this talent is god awful as it literally will make you do less damage altogether. If you don't believe me, here's a bunch of math on screen, which may seem impossible to interpret, but I'm sure you can figure it out. I don't really want to spend a lot of time explaining it. If you don't believe me, there's the proof, but yeah, basically the damage to RPM ratio when running this talent will make you do literally less damage per second, so great job, Massive. Next is Eyeless. I don't really know of any way to consistently blind enemies all the time, so that pretty much makes this useless. Same with Sadist, I think. There's only a few ways to apply bleeds in this game, and it's not worth using it at all over other talents. Pretty much the same deal with Ignited, so yeah. Lucky Shot isn't completely awful, but it only works on rifles and snipers, and I really couldn't care less about having additional magazine sizes on those types of guns. I'd much rather just have extra damage. Next is Naked. This is trash because you can only use it with a sniper that has an 8x scope on it, and I just foresee myself dying over and over again attempting to get full value out of this talent, so probably not worth running. Outsider is straight up just dog shit. It only works on an SMG, and I don't know why I would ever care about optimal range on an SMG, let alone nerf my fire rate in order to gain SMG, the gun that you're supposed to be at close range using. Honestly, this talent is almost as much of a joke as measured is. Next we have On Empty, which is bad because it's inconsistent, and if you need weapon handling, you want to get that on something that you'll have it up 100% of the time, like weapon mods or something, so probably not worth using at all. Next up, Pummel. This only works for shotguns, and I think it's bad as you have to invest in going for body shots for 3 kills in a row, and honestly, you just get more damage out of hitting headshots anyways, so definitely not worth using. Preservation, I guess, isn't the worst thing in the world. It's just that I don't think a mere 25% bonus to healing is worth running. Maybe if it was like 50 or 70%, I'd consider it for a heal build or something, but yeah, probably not. Next we have Nearsighted, which I think is pretty terrible because there's not that many guns that you really need a lot of stability on, and losing critical strike range and optimal range kind of sucks, depending upon which gun it is. Maybe it could be good in some niche cases, but I think most of the time it's pretty bad. Next we got Spike, which isn't too bad. Maybe it could be in B tier, but only would ever be useful for a solo player skill build. Extra 25% damage for the skill I don't think is that life-changing. Maybe somebody can prove me wrong, but yeah, I think it's okay, I guess. I think steady-handed is garbage because to get this bonus to proc consistently, you need to hit on average 35 shots, and most of the time reloading isn't that big of a deal anyways, except on something like an LMG, but if I were to run an LMG, I'd rather just have unhinged, and this also makes me use less than 5 offensive rolls to get, so yeah, no thanks. Next, unwavering. I shouldn't even have to say anything, just why does this talent even exist? It only works on SMGs, by the way, the gun that probably benefits the least from weapon handling, so there's that, I guess. Yeah, that's all the active talents out of the way. Now, let's quickly mention the passive talents, which there are only 7 of. Gonna start off with accurate, which is actually pretty decent. I wouldn't use this on a sniper or a rifle, though, as those guns currently don't benefit from the accuracy. Don't ask me why. People have tested this. Those guns literally don't get anything out of running accuracy. And yeah, I don't think it's worth running on anything except maybe an LMG, because certain LMGs can have very poor accuracy, but I think most other guns are fine in the accuracy department, and you'd probably rather run something else on them, such as Allegro, which I think is the best talent. It's going to give you 10% rate of fire. This talent is very good for fully auto guns, and it's going to give you a fantastic boost to fire rate, which is going to pretty much result in almost free damage. But on rifles, I don't think you would want to use this because you don't really want to be shooting at max RPM, as you're going to be missing a ton of shots. And obviously, it doesn't make much sense to put this on a sniper either. But for full auto guns, it's great. Distance is meh. Most guns have pretty decent optimal range for what they're used for anyway, so I wouldn't really use this on anything. Maybe in certain scenarios, but I can't really think of any. Extra is pretty decent. In most cases, though, I think I'd rather have Allegro, but 20% extra bullets isn't too bad. Maybe if you're running like an LMG or an AR, it could be pretty decent, but on guns like snipers and rifles, I don't think you get much value out of this. Jazz Hands seems decent, but I actually don't think it's that good because I don't think 10% reload speed is all that helpful. For example, on an AR that has like a 2-second reload speed, you'd only be getting 0.2 seconds faster, so it's not really noticeable. Maybe if you're running like an M60 or something, but I'd still just rather have Allegro than I would the reload speed. Optimize is okay. I think it's just a mix of accuracy and stability, but usually guns don't have a problem with both accuracy and stability. Typically, it's going to be one or the other, so in most cases, I just wouldn't use this. Lastly, we have stability, which is good for certain ARs, rifles, and semi-auto snipers that have a ton of vertical recoil, but there's only a handful of guns that will greatly benefit from this, such as an SVD. So if you're using a gun like that, stable's pretty good, but otherwise, probably not worth the run. So yeah, that's pretty much it. There are also holster talents, but I don't want to make this video any longer than it already is, and holster talents aren't going to make that much of a difference, but if you really want to min-max, I'd say Rooted is good, In Rhythm, Overlap, Stop, Drop, and Roll, or Wascally. The other holster talents aren't that great, but those ones are pretty decent. Alright, that's going to do it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to drop a like, as this video took quite a while to make, and it would help me a ton, and of course subscribe if you want to see videos similar to this one. I'll see you guys later.